I'll get up for this question.
Yes. I just have to make sure it's still working.
Yeah, we will.
It's been too long.
That and waking me up after. They help. Yeah, it was great fun.
Good morning. I am joined this morning by members of my command staff and Mayor Evans. I am beyond frustrated that we are here talking about more senseless, dispute-related homicides. As police chief, I can stand here and talk about the over 270 firearms this police department has recovered so far this year. I can talk about the multiple murder arrests, the high clearance rate for the major crime section. I can talk about the non-fatal shooting unit and the number of prosecutions we've made. I can talk about the stolen vehicle details, the stolen vehicle arrests. None of this will bring these victims back. What we need is for our community to come together with us and help us stop these disputes from escalating to violence and murder. You know, and as I said when we stood here last week, all of the murders we talked about last week started as a dispute among folks that knew each other that escalated into violence. So this weekend's violence started on Friday night on Avenue D. Around 6 p.m., officers responded to a residence at the 900 block of Avenue D for the report of a person shot. Officers on arriving located a 54-year-old Jose Caraballo with a gunshot wound to his torso. When they arrived, he was being loaded into a private vehicle. This private vehicle transported him to Rochester General Hospital, where he was pronounced dead an hour later. Preliminarily, it appears that there was an altercation inside of a residence, which led to at least one gunshot being fired, striking the victim in the torso. Currently, there are no suspects in custody at this time. On Saturday on Lyle Avenue, around 1:30 a.m., officers responded to the area of Lyle Avenue and Austin Street for the ShotSpotter activation and multiple 911 calls reporting gunfire. There, officers located 3 people shot inside and outside the residence in the 500 block of Lyle Avenue. 29-year-old Jared Perry and 31-year-old Marquise Chambers were located deceased at the scene. A third victim, a female in her 30s, was transported to Strong Hospital with a non-life-threatening gunshot wound to the upper body. Then on Sunday on East Main Street at approximately 6:15 p.m., officers responded to the Winter Garden Apartments at 2052 East Main Street for the report of a male stabbed. Officers located a 68-year-old Jose Hernandez suffering from a stab wound to the upper body. He was rushed to Strong Hospital, where he sadly died from his injuries. The preliminary investigation found that Hernandez was sitting in a chair inside of the community room when 71-year-old Raul Lascano walked up to him and stabbed him in the upper body. Lascano was safely taken into custody by responding officers and transported to Monroe County Jail. He is expected to be arraigned this morning in Rochester City Court for the charge of murder second degree. While we are still working to identify the exact circumstances of this crime, it is believed there was a disagreement between the 2 men a few minutes before the stabbing. And then early this morning on Ring Street at 1 a.m., officers responded for a ShotSpotter activation on Rialto Street, as well as a 911 call for a person shot. Officers located 2 victims on the porch of 28 Rialto Street. A male in his 40s was pronounced dead at the scene, and a female in her 40s was rushed to Strong Hospital, but also sadly passed away. A third victim, a male in his 20s, approached officers and advised that he was also shot. He was transported to Strong Hospital and is being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. This investigation so far has found that there was a group of people hanging in front of 28 Rialto Street when around 24 gunshots rang out. We are still working to determine a motive, but preliminarily, it appears that individuals, not necessarily the victims, within the crowd on Rialto were possibly targeted. So the major crime section is currently investigating all of these homicides. Again, we encourage anyone with information to please call 911. You can call the major crime section at 428-7157. You can call Crime Stoppers 423-9300. You can email the Major Crimes Unit at majorcrimes@cityofrochester.gov. You can go on the Report It app and remain anonymous. I'm sure, as the mayor will reiterate, you can also call City Hall and be anonymous, and they will get the information to us. One thing I also have to note, I don't know if you picked up on it on almost every one of these, ShotSpotter activation, ShotSpotter activation, ShotSpotter activation. The ShotSpotter system allows prompt and rapid response to a lot of these incidents, which often means the difference between officers arriving on scene while the suspects are still there, or delayed response when the suspects have more of an opportunity to flee. The RPD cannot solve these homicides alone. We need community support to hold people accountable, those that bring violence to our community. A combination of our members in the community led to a closure of all 3 of last weekend's homicides. Although we can't bring these victims back, everyone with information about these senseless murders owes it to these victims to come forward with information and bring accountability to those that wreak havoc in our community. Our investigators are working diligently. They've made great progress to solve these cases. But again, we need your help. I'll hand it over to the mayor, and then I'll take a few questions.
Thank you, Chief. I'll be brief. So 2 weeks ago, we had, as you know, 3 homicides that were, as I call it, senseless. And we put out a call to the community and asked for their help. And many people stepped up and helped. We're asking to do the same thing again this week. Although I will tell you that homicides are bad. They're horrible incidences when they happen. They take people out of the community. They separate people from their family. They change the life of both the perpetrator and the victim. But one of the things I'm increasingly concerned about in this city, and also across the country, if you look at what happened to the west of us in Buffalo with 6 folks being shot this past weekend, is the quickness in which petty disputes are escalating to violence. You know, I stand up here time and time and talk about prevention, intervention, and suppression. But it is extremely difficult for government or police to prevent the escalation of violence in private residences over, and obviously all of this is under investigation, but just preliminarily, we can say without a doubt that all of this is personal disputes that just escalate. And we don't have and I don't have the answers for that. I think we have to look inward as a community to see what we can do, so that way we won't have a senior citizen murdering another senior citizen while sitting in a chair. We're not patrolling the senior room of an apartment building. On a given weekend, folks are having a good time, and I want folks to have a good time. This is a city we like to be able to celebrate. But then in the next moment, when someone disrespects someone, so they decide to pull out their gun and just execute the people who they were having disagreements with, I think we have to look inward as a community to see how collectively we work to say this is not normal. This is not enough. And talking to mayors across the country, this is what we're seeing across the country. I don't know if it's the heated rhetoric. I don't know what the trigger is for a simple argument. I spend my life arguing as an elected. It's what we do in my business. We argue. We go back and forth. And if every time I was angry, man, it wouldn't be good, right? But all of these cases, and we're going to solve all of them. I have no ifs, ands, and buts about that, because the community has been great in terms of giving information, and the men and women of the Rochester Police Department, particularly Major Crimes, has been working overtime to make sure they bring these cases to a close. But we have to look and have a deeper conversation about conflict resolution and disputes. And we often talk about young people, but if you look at the ages of a lot of the victims in this, these are older people. And don't get me wrong, our young people, we have to deal with them, but these are older people. And it's very concerning. It's very concerning because it's not going to be solved with a gun violence emergency, us putting the command van somewhere. It would not solve a lot of the issues as it relates to the interpersonal disputes. The other point I'll make is that I think from our court system, we have to make it very uncomfortable for people to carry illegal guns. Because if you look at a lot of the cases in which we have prosecuted people who have done gun crime in particular, but we've also had knives, but gun crime in particular, people think that they can just carry a gun and it's all right. And I think when we pick someone up with an illegal gun, it's critical that the judicial system use the tools that they have through bail and other means to send a message to folks that you shouldn't be walking around with an illegal gun. Because if you're in an argument and you get in a fist fight, and we have fist fights, we can kind of come back from that. But if someone has a firearm and their temper is hot and they escalate, you see what we saw this past weekend. And it's only going to get warmer. We're going to have more celebrations. We're going to have more people together. But there's no other word for this other than senseless. Every single one of these. And it's going to take the community's approach. So I want to encourage folks, again, to reach out to Major Crimes, reach out to the mayor's office, reach out to Crime Stoppers, and you can either reach out to City Hall. We'll get the information over to the Rochester Police Department, and we'll get it out confidentially. My thoughts and prayers are with the victims of these senseless homicide and their family members. And I hope that we can continue to push for and see peace in our community, because that's what Rochester deserves. We deserve peaceful weekends, free of senseless violence. Thanks, Chief.
Questions?
Chief, you made a point of mentioning that many of these situations were, I guess, initially triggered by ShotSpotter. There has been some static in other parts of the country about that program. What has your experience been here? Have you run into any issues with it, or has it been nothing but helpful?
Oh, my experience is it's been nothing but helpful. Unfortunately, it is not cheap. If we had the availability, we would have arrays all over the entire city, because there are many shots fired that, quite frankly, we don't become aware of because we don't have arrays. So, we do our best to work with data. Everything we do is data driven, as I've said many, many times before. So the arrays go where the data shows that we have a lot of shots fired, a lot of CPW arrests.
Chief, when you talk about community support, what would you say the difference is compared to years past? I mean, closing 3 homicides a couple weeks ago, is that from residents, neighborhood support groups? How has that effort stepped up, would you say, in years past?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think, number one, folks are getting pretty sick and tired of it. But I think the other part of it is we have had to, and we've worked very hard at reestablishing our relationship with the community, and reinventing our relationship, which was completely shattered 3 years ago. So folks are willing to talk to us. We've made great strides in having that relationship and having that relationship back. So, information is important. As I said, we're never going to arrest our way out of all the problems, the social problems that we have in the city. But when it comes to enforcement, which is our third leg of the stool, we're getting pretty good at it, and it is because of the community's help.
The homicide from early this morning, there was some calls to Blue Cross Arena last night for a fight there. Do you believe that escalated and led to this, or is that tied? I know there was some talk that it was maybe tied to the concert.
Yeah, other than some things that we're seeing on social media, I don't have anything concrete that ties them together at this time. Obviously, it's very early on. All right, thank you, everyone.
What do you want to go back and then we'll come back out?